Hello everyone, I hope you've had a good week. I want to start off by acknowledging the gift of the shul being able to reopen, albeit only very partially. It's very limited, we've got lots of rules in place, we have to wear face masks, certainly no socialising or kiddush, but it was beautiful. It was so wonderful to be back in our shul davening, whether on Shabbos or during the week, to be able to pray in a place conducive to tefillah, to serving Hashem, and to be able to do so in the presence of our friends and our community was really something very special. And I say this very conscious of the many who are still sheltering, and there's no intention to pressure anyone to return. Everyone has to make their own decision about when the right time and place to do so is, but still to be appreciative of the small and partial gift we've been given. And for me, one of the things I want to take out of Corona is to appreciate the small gifts of life, to be well, to be alive, to be able to breathe, to be able to step outside and see people, to see the sky, to breathe fresh air and to walk amongst the trees. And just that return back to basics, to appreciate that which we sometimes take for granted, is something I want to work on and take out of Corona. The beginning of the Sedra opens describing the act of Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, who was a kanoi, a zealot, who stepped forward in a bold and decisive act of leadership and took a vigilante initiative in addressing the problem that had occurred in Baal Pa'or, in the terrible act of pagan worship and immorality that has swept across the Jewish people, by dealing with the leaders, the ringleaders of this failure. And Pinchas is praised for this act of zealotry. Hashem rewards him with a bris shalom, with a covenant of peace. He's awarded with a bris kovenas olam by becoming a kohen. Certainly in this instance, in this example, it was the right thing to do, and Pinchas stepping forward and demonstrating that passionate, zealous dedication to Hashem and to morals and values and that which is right was the correct course of action to take. Interestingly, the sages, both in the Medrash and the Zohar, link Pinchas to another character, and they say Pinchas zu Eliyahu. Pinchas and Eliyahu are somehow one and the same person. Now, whether they mean by this that Pinchas is literally Eliyahu who lived a long life, or somehow their souls are linked, or perhaps they're just saying they have commonalities, but they certainly connect these two very different figures enough. And this is because Eliyahu also has this quality of being a kanoi, of being a zealot, of stepping forward and passionately, zealously caring about the slip-ups of the Jewish people and leaping to the defense of God. And yet, interestingly, Hashem's response to the words of kanois, of zealotry, of Eliyahu, is not so positive at all. And Hashem actually responds to Eliyahu and says, because of this act of zealotry that you've done, after the incident of the confrontation with the false prophets of Baal at Har Carmel, Hashem informs Eliyahu that he is no longer fit to be the leader, and he advises him to anoint Elisha as the new Novi to take his place. What was Eliyahu's crime? Kano kanisi Hashem, because I had felt an exceeding zealotry to Hashem. Ki osu brischa b'nei Yisrael, because the Jewish people had sinned and deserted your covenant. And Hashem's response to Eliyahu is, I'm not happy with this zealotry. Lo, you are not suitable to be the leader of the Jewish people. How can this be that Pinchas on the one hand is awarded for his act, and Eliyahu loses the right of leadership because of exactly the same quality of personality? And the answer is that each time and place is different. As the Mishnah in Ovis tells us, we have to be makir as makomo. Each person has to recognize their environment and the correct and right way of dealing with it. Pinchas, addressing the generation who still had a Moshe and an Aaron as their leader, the generation who were about to enter Eretz Yisrael, sees them and he says the appropriate course of action is one of zealotry, of kinnah, and Hashem approves of this. But Eliyahu, perhaps the same person and certainly the same character, reacting with zealotry to the generation led by the wicked Achav and Izabel, the generation who unfortunately have been drawn into the Avodah Zarah of Baal. To him, Hashem says, zealotry is not the right response. The right response is that of understanding, of empathy, of drawing people in back to my service, rather than reacting in the way that you're doing. And this quality of knowing how to differentiate in each time and place and know how to respond to each individual and treat them as someone separate and different who needs to be dealt with in their own way is the key and core quality of a leader. And this is expressed later on in the Sedra, when Moshe turns to Hashem and he says it's time to appoint a new leader. I'm not going to be able to go into the lands of Israel. Who are you going to appoint as my successor? And Moshe gives a whole string of requirements and a job description for who he thinks should be the leader. Asher Yetzir Lifneim, Asher Yovel Lifneim. Someone who can go out in front of them and go in front of them. Asher Yotziim v'Yaviem will bring them in and out. V'lo tieh adas Hashem katzona shelo ein lo meroya. The flock, the congregation of Hashem shouldn't be like a flock without a shepherd. Very beautiful terms and descriptions of what it means to be a leader of the Jewish people. But at the beginning of his request, he says, this should be Ish al Ha'edah, someone who's over the congregation. And Hashem responds and he says, Yehoshua is the one who's qualified to be the new leader. Kaches Yeshua benun, not because he has all these other qualities, but because he is Ish Asher Ruach Bo, a person who has the spirit within him. And the Targum Onkelos understands this to mean Ruach Nevuah, the spirit of prophecy. But Rashi says this is someone who has the spirit of who? He's someone who's able to understand and empathy and work with the spirit of each and every individual in his flock. And this is what qualifies Yeshua to be a leader. Now, we're not leaders. Each of us, in our own way, simply has to navigate through life. But what this is telling us is that kanos, extremism, is rarely good. We need to adopt a positive mindset. We need to adopt a mindset in which we're able to see each individual as they are and see their qualities. And perhaps we're sometimes disappointed with some of our co-religionists. We can look back, particularly on the last few months, and maybe it's easy to criticize, whether those to the right or to the left. But this isn't going to get us anywhere. We need to adopt a positive stance. Certainly towards ourselves we need to try and do our best and improve, but when looking at others, we need to realize that what Hashem expects from us is the message he gave to Eliyahu rather than to a Pinchas. Pinchas acted bravely and boldly and Hashem approved. But most of the time, the right approach is Ish Asher Ruach Bo, someone who can relate to each individual as they are. In the words of the great Noam Elimelech, Sheikol Echod Roya Es Manas Kavero, that each of us should see that which is positive in our friends, in our co-religionists, in the other people that we mix with, to see the good in each other. Elokei HaRuchos, to relate to God as the one who accepts each of us as individuals as we are, each of us different. And that's okay. And the God who chooses to appoint a Yehoshua as a new leader, not because he had the other quality leaders of leadership that Moshe mentioned, but because Ish Asher Ruach Bo, in the words of Rashi, Sheyuchal Halich Kneged Rucho Shel Echad Ve'echad, because he's able to understand and appreciate and see the positive and move forward each and every one. Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos.